If you need quick, simple, healthy dinners, sheet pan dinners are the way to go. I know most of our minds go towards the crock pot or the instant pot, but nothing is going to give you that delicious, crispy flavor. It's such a hands-off way, and without needing any countertop extra equipment. All you need is your sheet pan. This week, I am showing you 4 sheet pan dinners I made over the past week and a half. These can all be made ahead of time and thrown in the oven when you're ready for them to be made. The first meal I made for this video was a harvest veggie roast with some butternut squash, some chopped sweet potatoes, some cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. They were roasted with kielbasa and bacon, and I topped it all off with a honey Dijon mustard dressing. This is using a lot of seasonal vegetables. The butternut squash is extremely affordable right now. Right now it's 99 cents a pound at almost every single one of my grocery stores. Cabbage is also super affordable. I only used about 1/4 of a cabbage, and I used a whole butternut squash and a 1 pound bag of Brussels sprouts that I halved, and then I just chopped up a sweet potato that we had. It was like the last sweet potato in our kitchen, so I just chopped it up and threw it in there. I'm topping this. I lined the pan with olive oil, and then I just did some salt and pepper over top of the vegetable. And then before putting it in the oven, I put the honey Dijon dressing. I put about half of it on there, and I reserved the rest to go on top of the kielbasa. So this is gonna roast in the oven before I add the kielbasa and the bacon. And then I roasted this in the oven at 400 degrees for about 30 minutes for adding the protein. Vegetables are in their first roasting. Add the rest of your honey Dijon to your bacon and your kielbasa, and then you will add that to your roasted vegetables and cook it for another 30 minutes. I sprinkled the seeds from the butternut squash over top of the roast as I added the kielbasa and the bacon just for some added nutrients, and I added it the second half of the roasting because I didn't want them to burn. We just ate this with some buttered bread in bowls. It was a really low-key dinner, and this really made for some really awesome leftovers throughout the week as well. This next recipe is something I found on Pinterest. It's a sheet pan meatloaf with some roasted potatoes and green beans. I started off by turning my oven on to 400 degrees and chopped up the golden potatoes and added them to a sheet pan with half a pound of green beans. Then in a mixing bowl, I added a ground beef and pork mixture. I purchased this meat on sale, but the recipe just calls for ground beef, so you can really use any ground meat that you have. I used an onion, ketchup, and Parmesan cheese instead of breadcrumbs because I didn't have any breadcrumbs. I loved the taste, but it probably could have used the breadcrumbs to soak up a little bit of the juices. I added an egg with salt and pepper and Italian seasoning. After mixing, you're going to shape these as individual patties, and I just separated it into 4 patties with 1 pound of beef. You can just cook them in a loaf pan. The individual ones made it a little more fun, but I don't think it would make a big difference taste-wise. And at first I was going to try to roast everything into one pan, but I just couldn't fit it all. So I put the meat in their own pan and baked the vegetables separately. Everything baked at the same time. It took about 30 minutes with an added 5 minutes at 525 to crisp everything up. And while everything is still hot, I coated it in a ketchup glaze that was made up of brown sugar, ketchup, and apple cider vinegar. These were a big hit with my toddler. This was something I'm definitely going to be doing again. I love kebabs, but we don't have a very good grill, so this next recipe is a really great alternative. This is a chicken teriyaki kind of kebab without the kebab. I used canned chunk pineapples with a bell pepper and onions. It was all chopped up into big chunks. I mixed it all together with chicken breasts that I chopped into bite-sized pieces with salt and pepper, and I topped it with garlic powder. And I used a large serving of this teriyaki sauce I got from Aldi. In the past year or so, Aldi has come out with some really good Asian dipping sauces that make great marinades or toppings for quick meals. And if you don't have an Aldi or don't want to use a teriyaki sauce, you could use barbecue sauce or even just soy sauce and some maple syrup. It's a really versatile meal. This went into the oven on aluminum foil at 400 degrees for 30 minutes, and then I bumped it up to broil for 10 minutes. I served this over rice and topped it with a little more teriyaki sauce. This would be a great meal to make. You could mix it all in the morning, marinate your chicken with your vegetables to get that super flavorful, and just throw it in the oven when you get home. This last meal was a huge hit, which is unsurprising because everybody loves breakfast for dinner. This is a high protein sheet pan pancake, and I loved it because it's high protein and it didn't require me to sit over top of a pan flipping pancakes all afternoon. I'm using the protein pancake mix from Aldi, and this is pretty much just a copy of the Kodiak brand. This with the cottage cheese made it super high protein. Before mixing the batter, I did cut up some bacon and cook it on a cast iron skillet. I find it easier to cut up the bacon before putting it on the skillet when I need bacon bits. And I set that over top of a clean towel to soak up any extra juices, because you don't want to add any extra juices to the pancake batter. The batter called for 2 cups of the mix, 2 eggs, and 1 cup of cottage cheese. To get the best texture, put it through a standing blender or an immersion blender. And then when that was all mixed up, I put it in a large glass baking dish. I think this is an 18-inch baking dish that I greased with butter. And I topped half of the pancake with cheese and bacon and the other half with strawberries and chocolate chips. And then I baked this again at 400 degrees for 18 minutes.